Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. My name is Sabrina, and I'm on the marketing team here at Stone Ridge. I am joined by our presenter, Marcus, and we also have Jody on the line today. We'll be discussing what moving to the cloud means to current GP users. As Marcus goes through the presentation today, please type your questions or comments into the questions pane. Everyone is muted to alleviate some of that background noise, but the point of this is to answer your questions and really help consider your path moving forward. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a copy of the recording after the event. With that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Marcus.
All right, thank you, Sabrina. Welcome to our webinar series looking at really moving from, or what the options are moving from GP to the cloud, specifically Dynamics 365 Business Central. This is part number 2 of the series, and at the end of the presentation, we're going to talk about upcoming presentations in this series. I think we're running them every other week for a couple weeks out. You can also visit our website to get the last presentation if you were not part of that presentation. We just want to make sure that people understand that these sessions are really designed to help our clients understand what options they have as we hear more about the cloud, as we hear about infrastructure as a service, as we look at really a lot of changes happening within the Microsoft Dynamics platform. We want to make sure that our clients understand what their options are. And one of the options certainly is to stay on GP. So we want to make sure that we reiterate that again. We have an awesome group of consultants. We've got expert talent. We've got a long history with the product, as well as a lot of our clients have a long history with the product. If GP is working for you and you really have no compelling reason to move, we are here to support you. So we just want to make sure that you get that message in these presentations. At the same time, people need to understand that they have options. So again, the landscape is changing very quickly as Microsoft continues some really extensive development around the cloud and what cloud offerings are. So we want to make sure people have the information to make a good decision. There are a lot of options for people, and Microsoft continues to give you more options. So let's help you figure that out. If you've got questions, feel free to ask them. If you want to meet with us one-on-one, we're more than willing and happy to do that. So let's look at our presentation for today. All right, so we're going to look at really software as a service and understand what does that mean. So when you hear the word cloud, there's really a lot of options and sort of a lot of misunderstanding about what cloud really means. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at the solution scalability and integration questions. We're going to look at some security and user management questions, and then just open for questions. So we're slotted for 30 minutes today. Hopefully I'm going to leave at least 10 minutes at the end. Maybe more time for questions that you might have. So again, as Sabrina said, type them in the chat box and we'll get to those. All right, so let's talk about what Business Central, Dynamics 365 Business Central really is. And if you go out and Google Dynamics 365, you're going to notice that there are a lot of products actually that make up the family of products. So Dynamics is a large group of products. Dynamics 365 is another set of products within that family. So we're talking specifically about Business Central. So there are sales applications and talent applications and all those sorts of things. Business Central is specifically what we're talking about today. So let's talk a little bit about what software as a service really is. So when you say cloud, or when people say I want to move to the cloud or I want to investigate the cloud, there's really a spectrum of options that you have with the cloud. So if you take the far extreme, maybe, let's say the far right side of cloud is software as a service. And what that really means is you eliminate all infrastructure in your environment, and in really infrastructure in the cloud as well is eliminated, and you get a URL and you log into a website and you process transactions. So if you think of maybe your bank account, that would maybe be a good example that we all work with day in and day out as an example of software as a service. You just log in, the system's maintained behind the scenes for you. There's another cloud offering that's really infrastructure as a service. So if you look at what Microsoft continues to roll out and develop in terms of cloud computing, infrastructure service is really a broad category of services that Microsoft does offer, and they're all hosted through the Azure environment. So if you take your current GP environment, for example, if you've got a server located in your environment and you really want to move to the cloud, but you don't want to switch from GP, there are options in Azure to move your environment to the cloud. So you would be using infrastructure as a service, and which means that you would set up a Windows server, you'd set up a SQL server and that sort of thing, but it's all cloud-based in an Azure environment. So you're not going to physically have servers. That's not what we're talking about with Business Central. So Business Central is a little bit further to the right, if you'd say, maybe to the left side is that infrastructure as a service option. So there's sort of a spectrum in here. Again, we're talking about things really on the far right side of things. So let's talk about what software as a service, what the implications of that really are. So with your current GP environment, you purchased, depending on when you purchased it, there were a lot of different licensing options, but you purchased a license for Dynamics GP, and that allowed you to install the application in your environment, and then you pay an annual maintenance fee. What the annual maintenance fee gives you is upgrades to the systems. It's going to give you patches. It's going to give you payroll updates. It's going to give you all that sort of information, and those get applied to your environment, right, on an ongoing basis. You also then have to purchase with that system, let's say a database structure. So I'm going to have to purchase Microsoft SQL Server, I'm going to have to purchase window licensing, and I'm going to physically have to purchase hardware that all this stuff runs on. So that's a typical GP environment. With Business Central, what you do is you purchase a license to access the service, which is on a per user, per monthly basis. But it eliminates all of the hardware infrastructure, the additional licensing costs, et cetera, that you're going to have to purchase with a GP premise on system premise. Okay, so let's talk about the implications of this in terms of hardware and licensing first. So as we talked about, really the infrastructure requirements, they're eliminated with software as a service, specifically with Business Central. So I don't have to purchase a SQL server. I don't have to purchase a remote desktop server. I don't have to deal with VPNs. I don't have to deal with security. I don't have to deal with any of that stuff that would go with an on-premise system. If you think about ERP and SQL Server purchases as well, I don't need to make those with those investments either when we're talking about a SaaS offering. So I don't have to purchase SQL Server. I don't have to purchase client access licensing. I don't need to do any of that. And really, the big differentiator here is purchasing versus a service. So I'm not buying anything with Business Central. I'm just, again, a per user per month fee to access the service. So let's talk a little bit about server maintenance and updates. So when you think again about the spectrum, so over on the left side, if you're thinking about infrastructure as a service, Azure is certainly an option for you. So in an Azure environment, there are, again, various levels of what that service could look like. But generally, I'm going to purchase space in the cloud that I could install a Windows server, a SQL server, that sort of thing. Maintenance still needs to be done on those applications, even though they're in the cloud. You still need to take care of backups and all that sort of stuff. But Azure infrastructure certainly could move people to the cloud without going to Business Central and without going to a software as a service model. We also then have in the SaaS model, Microsoft managed updates. So as we talk about Business Central, Microsoft maintains all of that infrastructure for you. So they take care of the upgrades, the maintenance, they take care of backups, they take care of upgrades, all that sort of stuff is maintained by Microsoft for you. Common question we get is, well, in my environment, I have a production system and I have maybe a development system and I have a test system. Maybe I have a hot backup system that I've got set up. So I've got multiple environments. What are my options when I think about SaaS? So Microsoft does provide the ability to have multiple what they call sandbox environments that are created. So I can copy my production to the sandbox environment, or I can just create a sandbox environment if I want to. So even in a SaaS environment, I'm going to have options for testing environments, for development environments. So I can still follow development lifecycle and my development rollout protocols with a cloud offering. I don't really have to have anything on-premise to even accomplish those types of things. Okay, so let's talk about application upgrades and enhancements. And what Microsoft is doing with Business Central, along with actually all of the Dynamics 365 products that are SaaS offerings, is they're doing 2 major updates a year. So if you think of a traditional on-premise system, Microsoft was kind of in that 12 to 18 month cycle. They are going to go to a 6-month cycle, or they're actually using a 6-month cycle right now with Business Central. So twice a year, you're going to get what they call really a major update. And then periodic updates are coming out throughout the year. So at one point they were doing a monthly, they've sort of scaled that back now, and I think we're doing it 6 or 7 times a year, you're going to get a major update. But you're also going to have, a minor update. You're also going to have other patches and fixes that are going to go in even more regularly than that. So if there is an issue that's discovered, Microsoft is making those corrections and putting them into the system. So the nice thing about the SaaS offering is you've got Microsoft maintaining all those types of updates for you. You don't have to do it yourself. Another question that comes up when you think about transitioning or moving from a Dynamics GP system to Business Central in the cloud is the customizations. So I want to address those types of questions that we often get. And what Microsoft is moving to is an object-based extension model. So currently within Dynamics GP, you've got Dexterity that the product is developed in, but that's also where modifications can be made. You've got some VBA options as well. But with Business Central, there is no Dexterity, and it is an object-based extension model, and it's using Visual Studio. So it's more of an industry standard application that's used for building extensions and customizations to the system. And I'm going to say there's really 3 levels of those customizations. So you do have the ability as a client, as a user of the system, to make your own changes. So there are a set of object IDs that clients can create and deploy their own extensions within the system. So if you have people that can do Visual Studio coding, that's certainly an option for you. Option number 2 is to have a partner like Stoneridge make those modifications for you. And we can work in conjunction with client development teams so that we're not sort of overriding each other's code and that sort of thing. But it is an option then to have a partner develop and deploy extensions for you. And then the third option is really the ISV market. And that's that third option, or the third bullet here of what about my independent software vendors or their ISV options. So the majority of our GP clients have some sort of ISV that they've purchased and added into the system. The ability to extend Business Central functionality does exist with what they're calling the App Store. And I went out there on Monday, and there's over 400 apps that are currently available in the App Store specifically for Business Central. And Microsoft's goal with Business Central, and actually with all of their Dynamics applications, is to supply a minimum of 80% of the functionality that any given client is going to need out of the box. And then that remaining 20%, those needs are going to be solved with either an ISV, an extension that I could download from the App Store, or customizations that a partner or the client themselves is actually making. So that's sort of your options in terms of customizations and ISVs. What we're seeing right now is a lot of GP ISVs, organizations that provide those ISVs are creating Business Central extensions. So almost on a monthly basis now, we're seeing new extensions that are being developed for BC that are based on ISV models that GP clients were using. So binary stream is one that they just released. So MEM, multi-entity management, if people are using that with their GP system, a version has just been released that will work with Business Central. So just one example, and there's others that are available for you. All right, so let's talk about cost of ownership. And there are 3 levels of licenses that come with Business Central. So I have a team member license, I have an essentials license, and I have a premium license. Now, again, these are per user, per month charges. And let's talk a little bit about what those feature functionalities look like. So a team member user essentially is a read-only user. So they're going to have the ability to view any data. They can run reports. They also have some special abilities to do employee self-service. So if you're using the jobs module and I may be entering a timesheet, I have the ability with a team member user to do that sort of functionality. But let's just say in general, it's a read-only user. The next level is an essentials user. And what the essentials user has access to is really all of the financial applications, all of the sales, all of the purchasing, all of inventory, jobs. It's really, you have access to virtually everything in the system, okay, as an Essentials user. Then the third level is a premium user. And the premium user adds functionality around the service management modules and manufacturing. So if you need those, you would need to upgrade to a premium license. Otherwise, the Essentials license will work. Just one little caveat I like to point out is with the Essentials license is the job project accounting modules, but you also have within inventory the ability to do kitting, which I would say is a light manufacturing. It's a little more feature rich than the GP kitting option that exists within that application, and that meets most people's needs. All right, so let's talk about really what your options are when you transition from Dynamics GP to Business Central. And the first thing I want to point out is if you are current with your GP maintenance, you will get a discount for a period of time with these licenses. So they're not going to be this charge. For example, the Essentials user goes from $70 to $42. So again, call us if you've got questions about what that transition would look like and the timing of that, but you do get a discount for a period of time off of the list price. The caveat to this is you do have to be current with your current GP maintenance. So don't stop paying that if you're in transition. Don't stop paying that without talking to us to make sure that we get your account transitioned with Microsoft. Otherwise, you're going to end up in this spot where you can't get the discount. So just make sure you talk to us. But talk about a little bit about the financial implications of this. So your annual maintenance fee goes away with the transition to Business Central. And what you end up with then is again, per user per month fee. During this discount period, what you're going to see is that Microsoft has priced this so that it is about, and again, about is, in air quotes here, about the same price as what your maintenance fee would be. So what you're going to see during the discount period is really no change, basically no change in terms of what it's going to cost you on an annualized basis. Now, you're going to pay per month or per quarter or semi-annual or something like that versus just an annual fee. But again, the cash outlay on a 12-month period is about the same. After that discount period is over, your licensing costs are going to go up. So if you look at just a straight dollar for dollar comparison of what an annual maintenance fee costs versus the per user price is going to be, it's going to be an increase. But what you need to consider when you look at the total cost of ownership are all of the underlying costs associated with an on-premise system that are going to go away. And you really need to think about, what is an upgrade cost on an annual basis, or maybe it's every 18 months you do an upgrade. What does that cost? Cost your organization to upgrade your GP system, because that goes away. You're not going to incur that. If you think about what ongoing hardware and infrastructure costs are going to be, those all disappear as well. So if you upgrade servers, maybe every 4 to 5 years, you're going to have to look at this on maybe a 5 or 6 or 7 year basis to see, well, what does the system actually cost me from a GP perspective? And then what does it actually cost me from a Business Central perspective? And you can get a much better picture of the total cost of ownership. But again, total cost of ownership is a huge issue here. The other question that you have is, can I save staffing costs by moving to the cloud? And I'm going to say that depends. I think what most of our clients are seeing is there really is no reduction in an FTE count per se, but what they're able to do is to take those resources and redeploy them within the organization to do other things. So instead of maintaining hardware and infrastructure on a GP system, they're being redeployed to do some other sort of work within your environment, and they become more productive. All right, so the release schedule, again, we looked at that. Down at the bottom, October 2019 is our next major release. That URL that's listed there would show you the roadmap. So that shows you current feature functionality, shows you future and targeted dates for other feature functionality. All right, so let's look at solution scalability and integrations. Solution scalability. The system, Business Central, is actually hosted within the Microsoft Azure environment. So that's the back end. Now, that doesn't mean you need to maintain any of the infrastructure like you would with infrastructure as a service hosted in Azure. Okay, so software as a service eliminates all that. But that just gives you some perspective of the horsepower that Microsoft has behind the scenes. So they have multiple data centers across every continent. Microsoft just announced that they opened a data warehouse or a data center in Africa now. So they're on every continent except Antarctica. So they have massive amounts of resources and infrastructure that are going to support a Business Central system. So that's what's sitting behind your system. The other thing is talking about resizing hardware. Because Microsoft is maintaining that, if your organization grows or contracts in any way, Microsoft resources are going to take over and make sure that you have the horsepower behind the scenes needed to make sure that you can process the transactions and the volume of transactions that are required for your organization. So Microsoft takes care of all of that. One thing with user licenses is that you at any time can increase or decrease your user count. So that gives you a lot of flexibility. You have out-of-the-box integrations with other Microsoft products. So we talked about Dynamics 365 customer engagement and field service and talent. All of those have out-of-the-box integrations with Business Central. Field service, you have out-of-the-box integrations with Office products. So Outlook. So for example, there's a component of Business Central that can sit inside of Outlook that would allow you to enter or look up transactions without leaving Outlook. Out-of-the-box works. Excel functionality, Word, you've got a built-in integration with the Power Platform. So that gives you Microsoft Flow for workflows and approvals. You get Power Apps to be able to extend the application even further. And you get Power BI built in. The other big factor that you get with Business Central is the built-in integrations with artificial intelligence and machine learning that Microsoft continues to invest in. These are some really exciting opportunities that Microsoft is putting together, which really have only been available to the largest of the largest organizations until today. With a Business Central application, you can tie in and leverage the machine learning and artificial intelligence that, again, was only available to large organizations. It's available to smaller organizations and mid-sized organizations today. And then again, we talked about the marketplace extensions. Lots of options, over 400 available currently for this product. Business Central out of the box works across any device. So if you think about accessing the application via a web browser, via an app on a tablet, or via an app on the phone, free, available to you. You just need your user ID and password. You can download them yourself and you're off and running. You're going to get about, I'm going to say 99% of the functionality on the tablet and the phone that you do on the web. So I can post transactions, I can do reporting, all that sort of thing. The only exception to that is there's actually some planning utilities that work with the manufacturing component that just don't render correctly on a phone and tablet, just given the size of the real estate. So that's the stuff that's in that 1% that's not quite there yet. Overall, the application, we've got the full suite of products from financial management to sales to reporting and analysis, supply chain. More specifically, if you're looking at more feature functionality, we've got, quote to shipping, and on the sales side as well as on the purchasing side. Talked a little bit about kitting in the inventory component. So a lot of deep functionality that's available to you out of the box. Let's talk a little bit about security and user management, especially if you're transitioning from GP to Business Central, and just talk a little bit about this. So it is an integrated login with Active Directory. In terms of setting up a user, I create the user in my domain, I assign them a license, and you're off and running. So I don't need to do maintain two systems or anything like that. I could maintain that user within the domain. It is built-in integrated login. So when I log into Business Central, it's the same user ID and password that I've accessed my computer with. And then I have direct access through Excel to the application, to Power BI, Power Apps, any additional devices, all taken care of. Don't need to maintain any of that. Within Business Central, we still have groups, we still have permission sets, very similar to what you had in GP. The difference here is that the security system starts with the data and not forms and reports. So when we extend the application, let's say using Power Apps or using Excel, I don't need to build another security system around that like you would with traditional on-premise systems. I can do that right within the application. Okay, I didn't leave a whole lot of time, but that's what I specifically wanted to cover today. So let's talk about or address any questions that maybe people have or that have come up during our session.
Thanks, Marcus. That was a lot of information. So as you're kind of digesting that, feel free to type those questions into that questions pane. We did have a couple come in so far.
Okay.
The first one, Are there options if I want to move GP to the cloud, or is Dynamics 365 my only cloud option?
No, there's actually a lot of options for moving GP to the cloud. So our first webinar, I started that webinar by really asking the question about what are your goals for moving to the cloud? What are you really trying to do? What I found is when I've met with clients, some people, what they really want to do is eliminate hardware in their environment. So it's not so much moving to the cloud as it is eliminating hardware. They don't want physical hardware. Well, you don't have to actually move off of your GP system to eliminate hardware in your environment. So infrastructure as a service is certainly an option that we can help you with if that's one of your goals. And again, you don't have to switch off of GP. GP is a great system. It's been around a long time because it works. It's stable. You know what you're getting. You've got all your users trained. Maybe moving to the cloud really is infrastructure as a service as an option. And that's certainly something that we can help you with.
Great, thank you, Marcus. Another question, what does a typical migration look like?
Sure. So from Dynamics GP to Business Central, Microsoft is providing tools that will move your system. So if you look at GP and you say, you know what, I really like the way my customers are configured, my vendors are configured, my chart of accounts works, I don't want to make any changes to that. Great. Microsoft has a utility. It's actually free, comes with Business Central, and it would allow you to essentially extract your GP environment and port it over to Business Central, and you can be off and running. So that's something we certainly can help you with. We can talk through your options with that. Most of the clients that I've worked with, they want to go through an intermediary step and really either maybe redesign their chart of accounts or clean up customer records, that sort of thing. So those are things that we can help you with and really chart a course for you of how do I move from GP to Business Central. But there's a lot of options there, including just porting your system if you wanted to.
Great, thank you. Another question, does Integration Manager still work to import financial data?
No, so Integration Manager is a tool that works with Dynamics GP. That said, there's a lot of options within Business Central to get data in and out of the system. So I don't know that there's probably any implementation that we've done yet that didn't include something. So we have the first option, or maybe the most basic option, is an edit in Excel functionality. So within Excel, we can actually connect to the Business Central system. It will adhere to the security model, it adhere to the data validation model that's in Business Central, and you can upload or download data via Excel. We do have rapid start tools, so that's another level of option in terms of importing data. So that could be various file types that could be taken, if they're text files or even if they're Excel files, import data into Business Central on a regular basis. Again, that's a rapid start tool. And then we do have web services that are available. So if we've got an integration that you want to develop on an ongoing basis, web services works great. So lots of options for you, but specifically that product that doesn't port to Business Central.
Thank you. We have just a couple minutes left here, and we will definitely stick on the line for as long as needed to answer all of your questions. But before the time kind of wraps up, if there's anybody that needs to drop off, I just want to let you know that we will have some additional webinars in these series talking about other different aspects as it relates to transitioning to Business Central. In the follow-up email after today, you will receive copies of some more resources that were just on the screen, along with the invitations to join these upcoming webinars. So another question that came in here, Marcus, does Microsoft offer data back for Dynamics 365?
Data backups, yes. So I think with this October release, you're going to be able to download a copy of your database, a full copy of the database for you locally if you wanted to do something like that. Yeah, if that's the question, I think it is.
All right, thank you. Is there a minimum license requirement for Dynamics 365 Business Central?
No. Well, one user.
Okay. So really, no matter the size of the organization, it would work.
Yeah, and I have worked with organizations with as few as 2 users. It was a small nonprofit, and that's what they did. And I'm not sure what the upper end of our user count is currently with Stone Ridge clients. That's something I could look at, but it, certainly hundreds of users if you need it to be.
Great. Well, I haven't seen any other questions come in, but if you think of questions following the event today, you can sure reach out to us anytime, and we are happy to talk with you one-on-one. Thank you,
Well,
Marcus.